What an incredibly kind and warm welcome. And I hope that you will allow me to add to it in light of the fact that we have Lord Trimble in the room as well. And that is that I have this great accolade that in 2009, after being appointed the youngest member of the House of Lords, I pipped Lord Trimble to being voted the sexiest member of the House of Lords. You didn't know that, did you, Lord Trimble? But ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be here. And for a minute, I thought that I wouldn't make it. And this is not for Twitter repeats as I speak. But I thought I wouldn't make it, not because I thought I was going to be rugby tackled by the Secular Society, but because I was supposed to be taking the FCO chair at the National Security Council meeting this afternoon. And I said, no, I had to be here and I had to deliver this speech. So I really hope that I can make it worth your while in the half an hour that I have here. I'm delighted to speak about the vital place that I believe faith has in politics. I believe that the Conservative Party has always put faith at the heart of policy making. I believe that religion runs through our history and through our veins. And today I want to argue that in government, even in a coalition government, we are staying true to those roots. You only have to look around this building to see the evidence. Winston Churchill's letters, speeches, and papers making repeated references to faith. And the pages may have yellowed, but the sentiments remain as clear as ever. For him, religion was of the utmost importance to British society, and he was a big supporter of the established church. And he urged Britain to most strenuously resist any measure which would aim at severing the connection between church and state. And he later likened himself not to a pillar of the Church of England, but a buttress supporting it from the outside. But it was the teachings of Christianity, what he referred to as the flames of Christian ethics, that truly set him alight. And these Christian ethics, these universal values, were not defined in opposition to the ethics of other faiths. Instead, they were defined in opposition to evil, namely Nazism. In fact, his wider criticism of totalitarian ideologies was that they were godless. Meanwhile, Britain's Christian ethics remained our highest guide. Praise indeed, and all the more striking, given the lukewarmness of his optimistic, agnostic own beliefs. Now, from the greatest wartime Prime Minister to our greatest peacetime Prime Minister, a woman whose own faith was far from tepid. Under this roof are the carefully annotated catechism of the young Margaret Roberts and school exercise books with her father's sermons scrawled in the back, all reminding us that this leader, whom we so sadly lost this year, wasn't just a grocer's daughter, but a minister's daughter, someone who believed that faith had a firm place in politics. And from her speeches, I believe, to her so-called Sermon on the Mount, this sentiment was hammered home. In the latter, she took issue with the phrase, Christianity is about spiritual redemption, not social reform, because for her there was no separation between the two. There was, she thought, an undeniable role for faith in society. Faith reached areas that politics never could. For a nation to be noted for its industry, honesty and responsibility and justice, she said, its people need a purpose and an ethic. The state cannot provide these, they can only come from the teachings of a faith. Today we talk about the role of faith in politics and society. Well, Mrs. Thatcher viewed it the other way around, talking about the role of the state in Christian society. The state, politics for her was a mere add-on, faith was a constant and a necessity. Now, our party's faith in faith, our devotion to devotion, is clear when we look at the lives and careers of our greatest prime ministers. And I believe their pro-faith sentiment is still very much in evidence today, that we see flickers of Churchill's flame and echoes of Thatcher's sentiments in all we do. But this was never inevitable. When we came back into power in 2010, I felt that some of the reverence for religion had disappeared from politics. Despite 78% of people in this country professing a religion, faith was, I felt, being sidelined. And as the former Archbishop of Canterbury put it, religion was being viewed as the preserve of oddities, foreigners, and minorities. I think some people said that I represented all three. But I was concerned with what I saw was public policy being secularised to the extent that some places even felt that Christmas needed to be downgraded. And it's no wonder that the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found the sense of goodwill towards faith groups in rhetoric was not being matched by policy. And sadly, I found that therefore the last government didn't just refuse to do God, those famous words, but they also didn't get God. And therefore my first speech in government promised that we would be different, that unlike previously, we would do God. So we paved the way for everyday worship, changing the law to safeguard town hall prayers. We didn't just get behind faith schools, we created more. And of our flagship free schools, 1 in 4 are faith-based: Sikh, Jewish, Greek Orthodox, Christian, Muslim, and Hindu. We consistently rejected calls to curb people's right to express or manifest their religion by welcoming the ruling which saw Nadia Awada win the right to wear a small crucifix, and more recently standing firm against the calls to legislate over what women can and cannot wear, whether that's the veil or the niqab. And the creation of the Minister for Faith post, giving what I believe is religion a voice at the top table, not a privileged position, but an equal informer of the debate. This, I believe, is further proof, as one commentator put it, that the coalition is the most pro-faith government in the West. Now, our approach isn't just about enabling people to practice their faith. It's about allowing people to act upon their faith, to provide public services, to undertake social action, to enhance communities, not being suspicious of their motives or feeling that they will be proselytizing, but understanding that charity, virtue, and helping others are key components of expressions of religion, and that more often than not, people who do God do good. We fund the Church of England through the Church Urban Fund for the Social Action Near Neighbours programme, bringing together different faiths to bring about real change in communities, people who are doing God, doing good. And we have removed the barrier of discriminatory attitudes in government against faith groups winning voluntary sector contracts. I know that Mrs. Thatcher would have approved of devolving power to faith communities. There was nobody clearer on society's duties to its fellow man and the shortcomings of the state. And as she once said, I wonder whether the state services would have done more, as much for the man who fell amongst thieves as the Good Samaritan did for him. And I like to think that we are therefore mobilising our own Good Samaritans the country over. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is a third strand to our approach to faith in politics, and it's a wholehearted, unwavering intolerance of intolerance. This government completely rejects discrimination against a person because of their faith. And quite apart from our emphasis on interfaith programmes, on tackling anti-Semitism, on recording incidents of hate crime, I'm proud to say that we have done more than any other government to tackle the rising phenomena of Islamophobia. Now, Churchill may have had some interesting things to say about Islam, but I'll leave that to Warren Doctor to address that issue specifically, and I'm interested in reading his new book on the subject early next year. But personally, I think Churchill's own removal of his passage on Islam from the River War shows that he revisited, revised, and contextualised some of his views. After all, this was a man who argued for a spirit of religious toleration and who took the bigots to task, berating one anti-Semitic politician and telling him that his views did not represent the views of the Conservative Party, arguing that it was quite possible to be a good Englishman and a good Jew. And that has inspired me again and again on many occasions to say that it is entirely possible to be British and to be Muslim. So I hope I have been able to demonstrate that we are staying true to our roots, putting faith in its rightful place at the heart of British politics. Of course, there are those who disagree, who describe faith leaders and politicians as a gruesome combination, who talk about curbing my theocratic ambitions, who told them I was going to stand for the job as Grand Mufti, who says that the country should brace itself for the pro-religion Conservatives' return to power, But I think that's given enough airtime to the National Secular Society, who have been incredibly vocal on Twitter at the moment. What really matters is that we support people in their right to believe, that we mobilise those who want to do good deeds motivated by their faith, and that we protect people from discrimination, bigotry and intolerance. That is our stance on the place of faith in politics. I know Churchill would have welcomed it. I know Mrs. Thatcher would have championed it. And that is why we as a party and I as a politician am committed to it. Thank you very much.